Hey, what's going on? This is King Williams, and I am the host of the Neighborhood Watch podcast. The Neighborhood Watch is a podcast from the Atlanta Way, a documentary on gentrification, a documentary that I written, directed, and produced, and will be out later this spring. This particular episode of the Neighborhood Watch features Ash Nash. She is the owner and creator of Power Haus Creative. This was originally recorded in November of 2019, and it was right after Colin Kaepernick when he came and did his pro workout date in Atlanta. And so this conversation is really about that as well as what Ash is doing as well. And it also goes into another event in particular, which was an Atlanta Beltline exhibition called The Death of a Caterpillar and the community response to that particular installation. So you're going to hear about both of these. And if you want to know more about myself or Ash Nash, please check out the show notes or listen to the very end and we'll show you how to get in contact with both of us. But once again, this is Ash Nash of Power Haus Creative, somebody who I really enjoyed, somebody you should really know more about. And I look forward to you guys and what you guys think about this episode. I'm going to keep picking on Grace for a minute.
That's so funny.
All right, today it is Tuesday, November 19th, 2019. We are here on the legendary Auburn Avenue. We're at the corner of Auburn. And what's the cross street here? I think it's, does anybody know? And which one? Who? Hillier. Thank you, Grace. Auburn and Hillier. So I'm actually here this is a collaborative space, which is a really interesting one. It's my first time being introduced here, and it's called Remerge, correct?
Yes.
And so I'm actually here today with someone who I believe is, in 2019, has really, really had an intersection with almost anything significant in the city of Atlanta related to the arts movement. She's a woman who is not from Atlanta, but she's offered so much in terms of her expertise and her insight in just a few short years. And especially now with being engaged with one particular person, that being Mr. Colin Kaepernick, it's great to actually have her on the podcast and to even have her featured here. She's one of our 21 women that we're featuring this week at the Supporter Report. She's known by everyone as Ash Nash. If you found her, if you've seen her anywhere out in the streets or at an art event or online, she is the owner of Power Haus Creative, which is an organization here that manages artists throughout Atlanta, some of which you've probably seen their work and some of which you may know, including Fabian Williams, who is one of the Atlanta staples. You've seen Fabian Williams work at some point in Atlanta if you've been here longer than 10 minutes. And so it's really great to have her and kind of talk about everything that's been going on recently, as well as what she's doing. So I'm going to let her introduce herself. Give it up for Ash Nash.
Thank you, King. I appreciate those kind words.
Okay. And so how do people know you? Because you kind of seems like you came out of nowhere, but you are like everywhere at once.
I would say more broadly as more of a conduit. That's pretty much how a lot of this came about. I started a brand called Treehouse ATL in 2017, and I really just wanted to like focus and support and feature artists from who were just really putting in the grassroots work. And let me take that back. That's actually artists, chefs, and musicians. And so I would go around, and I had like a tea brand, and I would go around and just really just watch like who's really like putting in the work, but not really asking for anything or saying anything. And I would target those creatives. And once I would interview with them, basically I would just plug them for like a week, just try to make the community aware of what's going on with them. And I also tried to promote more of the balance between being a creative and an entrepreneur, because it's extremely challenging. Some people work multiple jobs. They have families. There's cultural issues, and you have to juggle it all. And so the big thing was, let's find a way to find and maintain balance between this lifestyle and just really, if anything, just enjoy the process. So what is everyone doing to enjoy the process and remember why they started doing what they got into?
Okay. And so how does that transition into Power Haus?
So with Power Haus, basically I started Treehouse ATL in 2017. I featured a ton of artists and I featured a ton of creatives. And about a month prior to my 1 year anniversary, Fabian Williams had reached out. And he was like, "Hey, I like how you're running your company." Or he reached out and said, "I like how you're running your brand, and I'm interested in doing a collaboration." So I was like, "Cool." I knew who he was, but Atlanta is just full of so much talent that it was like, "Cool, I'm down." And we ended up doing a collaboration. It was called the Dream Box, and basically he took 4 of his murals and we turned them into hologram stickers. And then in the box it had like tea and sage, and we just promoted the box. It sold out. We did a limited run and it sold out. And also I did a collaboration with C-Flux Sing called Tea and Trumpets, and it was amazing. There was tea, and he did a custom design. And then we also had like a mix, which started off with some Miles Davis and picked up into like some Nas. But it was really to help creatives stop and focus and process and digest their moments. From there, I had a 1 year anniversary at Closet, owned by Tukey Carter, off of right next to City of Ink. And it was amazing. There was artists like Joe King, C-Flux was in there, Goldie Gold, Fabian, Monica Ely, Courtney Brooks, she was in there. And Phyllis Diller did like a pop-up kind of photo shoot thing. And it was just cool, just a celebration of all the progress that we had all made. From there, Fabian kind of reached out again, and he was like, "I need an assistant." So I'm like, I'm still trying to get my own plane off the ground, but I'll see what I can do. And then I was like, it's cool. I'll just let me know what you need. So we started working together. And then quickly, I would say about two and a half months. During that time, he was working with another like management team. So they pretty much phased out and then passed everything over to me. And I just started just doing this whole like matrix architect reconstruction, refiguring things. Like, well, why are we doing this? Why don't we just do this? Or why don't you stop doing this? Let's do this. And so that picked up some momentum. And then about after 2.5, 3 months, I pretty much moved, turned into his manager, because I was like his only team member that was there as often as I was. And it was actually my friend Vec Neal. He's an amazing photographer. He reached out to me one day, I think we were doing like a visit or something, and he was like, "You're a manager, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, like this is truly like visual artist management." And so I kept working with Fabian over the months, and it was rough. It was really rough because he wasn't getting a lot of support. Companies and brands were reaching out to him like, "Oh, we love your work. We got to take it to the client and see what they think." And then they take it to the client and come to find out it would be the NFL, and they didn't like him. They didn't like his work because of the Kaepernick murals that he had done in the West End in like 2015, I believe. So it was a full on, like, it was the trenches. Me just still trying to find my footing from trying to balance my brand and be a manager. And then also still trying to like either create opportunities or take the opportunities that Fabian had to their end point. Fast forward to February 2019. Wow, that's this year. That's crazy. Fast forward to February 2019. The building that Fabian had did his Caplana mural on in the West End was demolished on like a Friday? No, it was like a Thursday.
It was like, I remember it was like, it was literally on a Thursday, because I came back that following Friday. It was actually gone. I actually have a photo of it. Like, a
Yeah,
24-hour photo of that.
the rubble. So the community went crazy. They were completely outraged by it, and plus there was just so much hype leading up to it from the city just trying to get, prepared for the Super Bowl coming, because there's all this money being pumped through. But there was some weird stuff happening, like buildings was catching on fire, and there was a terrible, forgive me, I don't remember his name, but a young man was murdered.
Yeah, there was 2 actually.
Yeah. It's just like it was just bizarre. And then the building got demolished. It was like, yo, this is a Twilight Zone out here. And so yeah, the building got demolished, and everyone's like tagging him, going crazy, and he's trying to figure out, what am I gonna do? And I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? And it dawned on me, and I was like, because we're like competitive. So I told him, like, man, you can't just take that, like, because I knew he was just gonna try to put a one big Colin Kaepernick mural just to replace the old one, and then that was it. And I was like, nah, that's not enough. Bigger. We need bigger. So I reached out to some of the local creatives, the street arts community, and I was like, yo, y'all need to have his back, because y'all are a community of street arts, and we need to support. We need to figure out what happened. And so they were like, okay, cool, like, what do you want us to do? And I was like, I don't know. I haven't thought about that part. I just need to get people first. And then it hit me, and I was like, how about, as everyone's entering into the stadium, the night before, let's go ahead and drop a whole bunch of Colin Kaepernick murals of him kneeling. So there would have been, I ended up getting there was 40 people that we had ready to go. And so I wanted there to be 40 kneeling Colin Kaepernicks in different styles. And this is our city, this is Atlanta. You don't come in here and just kick over buildings and staples in the community that represent our identity. And it felt like an attack on just even the creative class, So I got the idea, figured it out, and then I hit up Fabian, and I was like, I got this idea. What do you think? And I ran it by him, and he was like, yes, but no, because he had already been in a lawsuit with the city pertaining to the public arts, public arts ordinance? Yeah. And so what we decided to do is he narrowed it down to 7. He came up with the Capper Bowl name, because he comes up these weird, there's just.
He has a good sense of marketing his material.
Yes, yeah, and he comes from an ad agency background, so I think I can't even remember the other options we came up with, but yeah, we ended up running with Capper Bowl, and yeah, so from there, we started reaching out, to the community, we need business owners' permission, because if you have the business owners' permission, then you can go ahead. The business owners have strong rights in this city. So once we got their permission, this was a huge challenge for me, because it was a challenge for me because there were people volunteering walls for these murals, but they didn't necessarily own their building. So we had to have permission from the building owners, which basically on the Friday of the Super Bowl, and the city is going crazy, and it's hard to get in touch with people. It was just I pretty much did that from my kitchen table, organizing, rallying people. Everyone was just passing off stuff to me, and then just me figuring out what to do and how to orchestrate it. But my biggest, making sure that the community was informed and that it was organized, because pretty much the manpower was me behind him putting up that mural. So, so we narrowed out the parameters. We figured out what artists were available, who was able to do it. And then my daughter, my 18-year-old daughter, she set up a GoFundMe account. And so she was pretty much my my co-pilot through all of this. Oh, I put together like a list of, because I wanted it to be organized again. So I put together a list. I paired the artist with the business owner. A huge issue was like we didn't have any money for supplies. So I'm like, Fabian, you rallying all these people, but where's the paint and supplies going to come from? And the community really came through with those supplies. The morning of the Super Bowl, Fabian went out there at like 1 a.m. and did he pretty much wanted to set the tone and the standard for what the other murals should be, the energy that we were trying to create. He dropped this, like I had it all planned out. It's nice, organized, like, because this way I could keep tracking. And he pretty much released the image of the mural that morning. And I had been up for like 3 days at that point. So I finally I briefed him on like what we were supposed to do. And I had like an hour of sleep, I think. And by the time I woke up, like all hell had broke loose because they were calling from like Germany, Canada, all over the city, because Fabian went ahead and like jumped our process. He just released the first image of Colin Kaepernick. So yeah, the city went crazy. And by that time I had to figure out how to rally, like, okay, I need artists, who's who. Some of them I hadn't met yet. And it was like, who's going where. Like, it was just, but I ended up getting over to his studio and it just turned into a full on like operation that ended up going like worldwide. So
You're beyond worldwide, because this is probably like within 48 hours, all of these things that happened, maybe 72 at the absolute most. And for those who don't know, Colin Kaepernick at that point had not quite reached the settlement with the grievance on the NFL.
No.
So it was a still ongoing dispute with the NFL. He had been out for, at that point, 2 seasons of football from the NFL. And so there was a general pushback from people across the board, people who I never even would expect to be against the NFL in the Super Bowl, that were in regards to the Super Bowl coming to Atlanta. In my opinion, I think Fabian is the muralist that we should be funding versus like some of the murals that I see right now from some of the big name players in Atlanta. I'm not going to name their name. He does work that is thought provoking. He does work that is eye catching and is visually arresting.
Conceptual.
Right. To undersell everything.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the few times recently in that public art has not only been thought-provoking, but it's also been very, very controversial in Atlanta, in a city that typically does not have public art that is quite controversial. And that says a lot for a city to be like Atlanta, as culturally significant as it is. And so that brings me to another part of the Kaepernick situation, which is this is the weekend after everything has happened with Kaepernick's potential tryout with the NFL. And so can you explain to people what actually happened?
This all really came about because once Colin Kaepernick and the Know Your Rights camp caught wind of what was going on in Atlanta, he was actually here on the ground that day. And I think they tried to reach out, but it was just pure pandemonium. Like, it was just absolutely insane. I had reporters, I had community members, I had everybody coming at me, and finally got connected. And once they reached out, they were like, we want you guys to come to the Know Your Rights camp pop-up in Baltimore, which basically Know Your Rights is an organization that empowers underserved children in different communities, primarily where something significant has happened, like a murder or just something traumatic to the community. So with they flew us out to Baltimore Know Your Rights camp. We got to talk to him firsthand about the murals and the whole execution organization of the city. From there, he was down here like 2 weeks later because he was playing in Quavo's Huncho Day, but he wanted to see the murals. So I reached out to all the artists and the business owners. That was a huge thing, is I wanted to make sure, because the artists can't put up work without the business owners. So we need to make sure that we're paying homage to the people who help us. So I got together the artists, and I got together, because when they reached out, they're like, we want to meet the artists. And I was like, well, I can't really have you meet the artists if you don't meet the business owners, because the artists can't paint if they don't have a canvas. So here we're now like 20 deep or something. But we got them all in the room, and they all got to meet him, because we had got to meet him from the Baltimore thing. But truly, for me, my biggest thing with the Capra Bowl was that I wanted it to be a united front, a collective rise, and I wanted all of the artists to go around, with that same momentum, because there was a lot of, I'm only one person, so there was a lot of misinformation about whose mural was whose and things like that. Yeah, so, we got everyone together. They got to meet Colin. So from there, once they decided that they were going to do an Atlanta pop-up, I was their point of contact. I did 2 things with the organization, and this was literally like a month ago at this point from today. Rally and organize nonprofit organizations because they only work with other nonprofits, and we could only have underserved children. Trayvon Martin's lawyer, attorney Ben Crump, was there. Nick Cannon comes out. Malcolm X's first daughter, Ambassador Shabazz, is there. And they just empower the kids with like rights. And did you know that, the police can lie to you and ways that they can dupe you. So we're just really trying to catch them early on. But my role with that was pretty much helping do outreach to a lot of the organization. And it was rough because it was a challenge because certain organizations wouldn't get back to us in a timely manner. And we were really trying to do everything without saying his name because we wanted people there who were just genuinely there for the purpose of this is a free youth camp initiative for these kids. So yeah, we were a little nervous, but we ended up having an amazing turnout, way more than we expected. And it was over 400 underserved kids, and it was held at the Gathering Spot, which is a Black-owned establishment. And then I also did some of the art curation. So all of the artists who were in Capperbowl, we collected images and they did like a resource guide, and Fabian hung pieces at the Gathering Spot space. So now fast forward to this past weekend, the NFL reached out to Colin Kaepernick and said, they're going to put a workout together for him in Atlanta, and it's going to be on a Saturday. Soon as that came out, they reached out to me and they were like, let's wait to get some more details and see if this is for real. The way the NFL moves was, one, it was just, usually I think you have about 2 weeks prior to being able to arrange your workout, who's going to be your like receivers. And so once we got word like, yeah, this is a go, then it was back to organizing again. It was different this time though, because for one, it was an hour away. The location they wanted was at the Falcons camp, which is in Flowery Branch, which for me, it was a different momentum because when we did Capperbowl, it was right here in the city. Anybody could. With this too, it was like, yeah, we're at Flowery Branch, but they weren't going to get to see him play. And there was pretty much a gate up there. I had some people that went ahead and they were out there early. Brandon Peters, who's a super dope journalist and also like bookstore annex. He's sending me pictures and I'm like, how's it looking right now? Because I was still organizing some stuff in the city. He sends me a picture and it's like those MAGA people. And I was just like, we got this now, and they were, it had some slander about Colin Kaepernick. I was like, oh no, we got to roll out because when it comes to stuff, we gotta set the record straight on that. For me, that's how. So yeah, rallied as much of the community as possible. There was already some like the Kappas came through. Colin Kaepernick is
Kappa. Alpha, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they always Kappas always come through for Colin no matter what. It's crazy.
Yeah. So shout out to Kappa Alpha.
Yeah. Like they always roll through deep. I think if you look on Instagram, you see like Kappas for Kaepernick. Like there's actually a nonprofit organization. I'm sorry, I don't know if they're nonprofit
or just an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kappas for Kaepernick is a serious movement that's nation. A ton of reporters and stuff. Make America great again, folks. A ton of flags. But what was unfortunate was they were on one side of the entrance and we were on a full-on segregation.
Right.
So in rallying the community, like about to go out to 1960s, in the spirit of the home of the civil rights, you got to do what you got to do. So we went out there and then I got word as we were going that the location was about to change. And so then it was like, okay, where is it changing? Because now there's people who are out there waiting. They're super excited to see Colin Kaepernick, but honestly, at that location, I mean, it's a gate. Like you couldn't go through, media couldn't go through. We were all I got word about the new location, checked it, and we're like, well, that's in Riverdale. It's at Charles Drew High School in Riverdale.
Yeah. How did Riverdale even come about? Are you aware of like why they picked Riverdale versus like a school even closer or in the city?
Honestly, that I don't know, but I'm sure it had to do with like timing or who's the first to respond.
Gotcha.
It's extremely time sensitive at this point because he was supposed to start his workout at Flowery Branch at 3:00. And then I think they called. So we were like, well, we're still going to go. Everyone's still going to go. And whoever hadn't left their house, like just stay. Either way, just be ready. So we got down there and The location changed and it was like an hour away. It was rolling. I made an announcement to all the people who were out there and said, guys, I can't guarantee that, the new location had been moved, but I talked to the camp, and if anything, when he's pulling through, he can wave or, say something. They just, I know that they just wanted to see him. They just wanted to send him love and energy and luck and all that stuff. Yeah, we get down there. No one's at the school yet. I mean, there was some reporters, some of the Know Your Rights camp. Some of the Know Your Rights camp was there, and then we just got down. I had 2 students from Morehouse with us as well, and let me tell you, these Morehouse students, they caught trains and buses and Ubers just to get down to Flowery. They were so determined to just be a part of it, and that, to me, that speaks volumes. And at that point, we're all just kind of helping navigate and do security with the camp. Colin arrives, more media arrives, so we went from Atlanta to Flowery Branch. But everyone still came through, and it actually worked out way better than expected because at this point it was so everyone could see it. There's nothing to hide. It's out here. You can come see for yourself. The way the setup of Charles Drew High School out there was perfect. It was close enough to the field. People could capture. So they had to be on one side of the fence, so we were internal. But you can still see everything clearly.
And so for people also at home who've never been to Atlanta or don't understand how far these distances are, Flowery Branch is about an hour north outside of Atlanta. And Riverdale is probably a good 20 minutes or so outside of the city limits of Atlanta on the south side. So for some people, that could be an 80-minute swing in one direction to go see Colin Kaepernick. That, by all accounts, we're still trying to figure out what has happened. As of the time you listen to this, from what we know right now, is that the following things have occurred. The NFL, prior to Kaepernick actually potentially having his tryout at the Falcons facility in Flowery Branch, we are aware that there was a waiver that was sent to Colin Kaepernick. The contents of the waiver are something that are being both disputed by both Kaepernick and the NFL. There are several reporters going into that, but the main gist of this is that there was a couple things that had the Kaepernick camp more in dispute, and that caused the move. The thing in dispute was this notion of having closed off access to both media and fans or general supporters was one. The other one is the content of the waiver itself, to which right now I cannot say what is definite, and that will be coming out hopefully more soon throughout the week. The main gist of that was that if Kaepernick were to go ahead with this facility workout, that he would essentially be given up rights to certain aspects of his potential ability to sue or have a countersuit against the NFL in the future, as well as any potential other things Kaepernick may have wanted to accuse the NFL of before, such as discrimination, and such as, anything related to the discrimination potential lawsuit or collusion lawsuits. So rightfully so, the Kaepernick camp backed out. And then another facility had to be found. That facility was 20 minutes outside of Atlanta on the south side, Riverdale, which again is still another 60 or so minutes difference.
We was road tripping.
So for the number of supporters who came, and once the video started going viral, which actually have come from mostly, I think all of them have come from Ash Nash, has shown what the pro date was like. You were very clear and transparent online with showing Kaepernick making throws, Kaepernick going through the typical drills that he would need to go to. And that is what's been portrayed in both the national and the international media, which are your images, correct?
Yes. So the first video that I had put out was, we had arrived because I wanted to make sure that the community knew, because there's all these distances and people are like, well, I want to support, but I don't really know what's going on. So I showed them, I'm here, I'm on the ground, this is what's going on. And Fabian did a live feed, and I was doing more snippets and posts of next steps or call to action or where to be. And so once I put those videos out, I think Sports Illustrated was the first one to say hey, can we use your video? And I was like, sure. As long as the people know this is real and don't change the narrative of what I'm putting out, which is why I try to be extremely clear and thorough when I was doing the posts, so that anyone that took that, at least you knew that this was going on.
And I want to also be clear about the nature of somebody who works on the media side of things. Typically, when you have videos or things like that that come from online, you always have to go and reference the original source. In this case, you were very public about sharing that information, not just with Sports Illustrated, but other media organizations. And also, when most of the time when those images come out, it's typically at that point at the behest of whatever the news organization and how they want to portray it. But you have been very diligent in explaining with every single photo, every single video that has come out, what this was going on, what was happening every step of the way, to where even if people wanted to maybe discredit Kaepernick in real time, it was really much more difficult because there are so many people from directly coming from your mouth, directly coming from Kaepernick supporters, directly from people watching the live stream as to can see what was actually happening. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the rare occasions in this social media era in which somebody who has done any form of online activism has been able to control their narrative from beginning, middle, and end. And so on that end, that is actually quite unique, and it's quite
that's dope. I mean, it's important. Knowledge truly is power, and the more informed we are, the better decisions we make. The better perspectives we have. And to me, if I was going to be responsible for having anyone leave their home to come out and for this opportunity and this moment in time, I had to make sure that they were at least equipped with. I had to equip them with knowledge before even coming out.
Right. And so I know this is an abrupt switch, but I do want to bring up something else, which is at the top of the program, I mentioned that you are essentially at the intersection of every major artist or a major event this year in the art world of Atlanta. What you guys can't see, there's a little bit of a chagrin on Ash's face.
There's so many artists. I work with a handful of I work with some amazing artists.
I know. Okay. And so for people who don't understand, I think Ash in a lot of ways is for hip hop. You know what? Ash is essentially the equivalent of like 1986 Dr. Dre just intersecting with all these people in that one region. Now, granted, again, this is before Straight Outta Compton, but Ash is essentially that version of Dr. Dre, the person who is essentially at the intersection of everyone going on, doing everything and putting things together that eventually is going to become like what we know as like Los Angeles rap, NWA and things like that. And I think Ash, for the most part, I think you are actually that person at that intersection about what the next level of Atlanta's art is going to look like. You have been in the right place at the right time for everything.
I really appreciate that.
All right. And so with that said, there was another event, and I got to be clear, this is one of the few times in which myself has actually interacted with something that's going on in real time as well. And with that said, there will also be the opportunity for the Atlanta Beltline. We're working on this as well, to actually have their retort to some of the things that's come out in the news about a more recent event. This event in particular is, if you have not seen it, as of November 18th, the first official news on local news television coverage about this particular art installation that went online. It's probably at this point at least slowly starting to gain steam. This is in regards to an installation from the Art on the Beltline, which is called The Death of a Caterpillar. Mm-hmm. The artist in question is somebody that we're also working on getting on the program to talk about his installation, and as well as the Beltline. But The Death of a Caterpillar, in short, is a exhibit that is
It's public art.
It's a public art piece as part of the Atlanta Beltline's ongoing public art space. And for those at home, the Atlanta Beltline is a 22-mile loop within the city limits of Atlanta. It connects over 50 neighborhoods. This particular installation is on the southwest portion of the Beltline, which is historically black and is currently undergoing many waves of gentrification in different spots on the Beltline. This piece in particular, The Death of the Caterpillar, drew a lot of ire for not necessarily its intent, but its overall imagery. The imagery is showcasing the life cycle of a caterpillar. And so anyone who knows what a caterpillar looks like, once it actually goes into its cocoon phase, it typically starts out in a tree. The cocoons hang from a tree. It's at that point in time, as the cocoon falls to the ground, the butterfly emerges from the cocoon. The cocoon itself is dying. And so when you see the artist representation, it's a metal-based installation that starts out with a black cocoon that starts in a tree, and over time it hits the ground, and you see different aspects of these cocoons becoming lighter and lighter, and at the last one goes into a full yellow. The artist wanted this to be a representation of the death of things such as bigotry, homophobia, sexism, Unfortunately, though, this particular piece was not received in the way the artist intended, nor the Beltline, nor the community in question. So this is one of the few cases where a public art piece has not only drew a lot of real ire and real commentary from like online critics, but also in real life. There was an event last week that was a public arts forum to which myself and Ash were both on the panel, a panel that became very, very heated, and a panel that ended up resulting in not only the artist being there as well as a representative for the Beltline, but subsequently has led to the installation at this point being scheduled to be taken down. Where that location is, by the time you hear this, it may not actually exist anymore because at this point it could be potentially pulled down.
I think they pulled it down yesterday.
Yeah, so it officially went down yesterday, so it's no longer on the exhibit. We're waiting to hear from the Beltline as to whether or not there will be a new exhibit from the artist or whether there be any particular installation of any art at that point in time. So with this said, me and Ash will talk a little bit about our experience on there and what that meant. And now, since that particular piece has now hit local news, it is now become more of a question of three things. One, the role of public art in black spaces, the role of art in gentrification, and more specifically, should all black art be either real or should it be just completely superfluous? So we'll start with the first part of this, which is, as somebody who's both on the panel with me last week, a very heated panel, which I was quite nervous for everyone involved. To be honest,
I got launched up into that panel.
Right. We're going to start with the first part, which is this role of public art in black spaces.
So when the artwork was, when the installation was first sent to me, people were outraged, and they're like, "This is absolutely, offensive. We need to do something. Community meeting, ASAP." So I was like, okay, I'm there for a healthy conversation. And when I got there, in order for us to have these extremely challenging conversations in public spaces, for one, I commend DeAndre for even showing up, because no one should ever have to walk into their own stoning when you know that people are upset with something that you've done. And so that was really brave of him, for one. My biggest thing was I wanted him to come in and basically explain the artwork, give a little history on himself and some of the work he's done in the past. And then for the Beltline representative to basically explain their process. So now that everyone in the room is on the same page as to how this happens. And from there, then we can open the discussion. The issue was, for one, they're pretty large. I think they're probably about 4 or 5 feet.
They were actually big. Like, they were noticeable to see. Yeah. I mean, because granted, it is, and it's unfortunate, it was hanging from a tree, and so the tree is large, so it takes a lot to be seen.
Yes. So they look like silhouettes of hanging bodies in a public space. The issue is there's no context around it. So, everyone has different perspectives, and we only know how to address things from perspectives, our cultural perspectives, so on and so forth. For me, it was more of, just in the evening time, to be walking and to see a silhouette of something hanging that resembles a body. As a black woman, who the current atmosphere right now, black women are being kidnapped, black men, we're being attacked in public. You could open your phone at any given moment and something's happened. That would feel like a warning. If for a black person, that feels like there's so many triggers and it's deep with us. So it's like, I would take that as a warning, and somebody's probably finna jump out at the bushes at me. Like, historically, that was sent to keep black folks in line. You come around here, you next. This is such a deep, there's just so many layers to this issue.
And with that said, then I guess we can probably get to the next part about that, which was this role of, I'm going to skip to the last one, to this one now, which is this role of, should black art be something that is essentially like, should we not have black art that is controversial or that is troubling or that is traumatic, or should all black art be about triumph and circumstance and just joy?
I think it should be a mixture.
Okay.
I don't ever want to forget who. I mean, it's hard enough. We got gentrification, identity. That's one of the things I love about Atlanta is you have so much creative expression here. We also need to be empathetic and aware of like present, historical and present times. The example I gave at the meeting was that we drove an hour to the Lynch Museum and we paid the ticket and we chose to expose ourselves to something that we knew we were about to see. Pure terror on the black culture, but that was something that we chose to do when we were ready. This, on the other hand, I think with no context, the location looking like silhouettes of bodies, that I think if anything that was my issue. The artwork, we definitely should not stop telling our stories, because the black experience is just something like, I love being black, I love it, I wear it, I'm unapologetic, but I also know what comes with being a black person, and there was a lot of people in the audience, in the community, who were saying like the artwork, it's not shame on him for doing this artwork, it's the location and not being sensitive to the community, because had they put that in Buckhead somewhere, given their perspective and experiences, generally speaking, I mean, that would have looked like a lantern or something.
Right. And so that also, too, gets to another part, which is, granted, this was one of the few times we had the artist there directly to actually tell exactly what he meant and said, but there was a general consensus of some people there who said they saw a young white girl playing with it who has experienced that instead of like a hanging body, like playing with the exhibit as like a toy, like a lantern. And so that actually caused more ire in the crowd than anything else that happened that night. And so it gets to another point about this notion of art in Atlanta in particular. We're going to keep it there. Art in Atlanta is already hard to kind of get off the ground. It's hard to have pieces that get people to think and are thought-provoking. What happens when we have art that is not embraced, but that is worth merit? So, I want to ask you this. Like, what happens in this case when we have a piece that is worth, it is a piece I think should be probably in a museum, but not necessarily on the Beltline, because there is a lot of context that needs to be built into that to kind of understand what's going on. And like you said, you need to be aware that something I would choose to walk into versus it's like being chosen for me. Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you this, like, what does that mean when there's a piece of art that is controversial or that is threatening? What do you think should be done when you see pieces like that?
I think there needs to be an immediate call to action for the organization who orchestrated the project, because he, as an artist, pretty much, I commend him. He pretty much walked into that meeting, defended himself in the meeting, and also was the first person, even though he wasn't happy with how he felt or how the community felt, he was the first person to publicly say, hey, I'm going to take this down. The community is upset. They're hurt. I feel a way about it, but I'm taking it down. I wish the Beltline would have done more to say, this was actually our mistake. There's a extreme, I got a lot of feedback from those community members, and they feel that there's an extreme disconnect between the Beltline and the community. I'm never going to say I'm tired of, what's made me resilient as a black woman from knowing my history, but I also am ready. I'm looking forward to the future. I'm looking forward to showing folks like this. We're gonna focus on this now. We good on those reminders. So I want to see us beaming. I want to see us scaling buildings. I want to see us big, large, bold, because that's what we are. And this is what black culture is. Something. This is one of the most.
It's American. It's the world. It is like the linchpin of like most of the world. From
the way we talk, the way we walk, the way everything is. America loves us and hates us. But it's something I'll never be ashamed of. But at the end of the day, it is heavy day to day being a black person. And I do feel that we need more. I feel like there's an extreme lack of street art representing black men and women, children, We're doing what we can with what we have, but it's not enough.
Right. And so actually I want to make a bit of a segue, which is we're on Auburn Avenue. We're actually across from a building that has a combination of both. But it seems as if the art in Atlanta isn't embraced by the dollars in Atlanta. And so I want to ask you that, just if you could quickly just explain, what is the disconnect between artists and dollars in Atlanta?
You'll notice if you've ever been to Art Basel, Wynwood District in Miami, New York, LA, and other cities, art is just everywhere. That translates so much into cap, and those cities really understand. I'm not going to say that every organization in Atlanta doesn't understand that, but I'm saying we got to do better. We have got better. Just even from a tourism, okay, let's talk business. From a tourism aspect, it needs to be a whole lot more art, because we already have these legs that are walking. We're the home of the civil rights movement, hip hop music. I mean, other countries, when we did Capra Bowl with no resources or support, journalists from Germany and Canada were contacting me like, what's going on in Atlanta? Other countries and other cities are watching us. And it's just like, my ultimate goal with Power Haus Creative is that we know our value, we know our worth, and we're going to do it. You don't want to invite us to certain tables, cool, but we're going to do it regardless. And we've already, I think this year alone, I know this year alone, we have proven that we're going to do it. You support us or not, we're going to do it.
Right. And that gets to something else I want to ask you, which is, I talked to a couple artists recently, and everyone has the same consensus, which is the art scene in Atlanta, for the most part, is good for maybe one or two people. It's hard to get those dollars, and more specifically, don't funnel back to the artist. And when it does, it's usually like some aspect of that artist or the arts culture being co-opted.
Yeah, that's where I stopped that train. We know our worth.
Right. And it brings to this other thing, like the Atlanta Influences Everything campaign that's been going on the last year or a couple of years or so. Atlanta gives out so much culture, but not even for free. Our creators aren't compensated. And so I know that's got to be frustrating to you when we give out so much culture that's not embraced and that's monetized by everyone else except for people within the culture.
It's extremely unfortunate, because whether it's music, visual art, performing art, there's still creatives who help turn wheels. And this city is thriving with you can collaborate damn near anything in this city, you know, because we is grassroots. We got to. The support, I'm not going to say entire. I mean, there's smaller organizations who remerge as a great place that deserves more funding, because I choose to, they actually reached out to me to do a partnership, and I understand what they're doing, and I feel that our missions align. And there's so many other spaces, the Connect in the West End. They deserve more. Like, these spaces it's crazy. Like, when people come to Atlanta, they don't want that top surface. You know, if they're coming in from Milwaukee or whatever, they want what they've seen on TV. And that's that culture and that texture that only our diverse creatives bring over here on Edgewood, Auburn Ave, you know. And this is what should be funded, because if we're looking at it from a business standpoint, that's capital.
Right. In my opinion, this is not your words, I'm going to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion is Atlanta has a hard issue with, and I've had legit arguments with people at Support Report about this, and I can speak on this myself. Atlanta's culture is black. The culture of blackness is not something that's even been embraced for the most part by most black people, unless it's respectable or unless it's some way connected to Martin Luther King or civil rights. And then what it is, it's like this Christmas card version of that, and not like the real version of civil rights or Martin Luther King. And so I think that we're at the point now where the black experience is being gentrified, both online, in real life, in our art scene, in our creative scene. And it seems as if the black community as a whole, from what I see people contact me about, it feels like it's being erased daily. People just start to feel like the art doesn't reflect them anymore. Yeah,
and it can also feel like an attack. Like, my identity is being my identity and who I am and who we are is not welcome, but you're benefiting off of it.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Atlanta puts out more cultural capital. There was an article I wrote earlier this year about, it was just Ariana Grande essentially copying 2 Chainz and every other rapper in Atlanta for her most successful album. I put in links about people rapping from Indonesia to South Korea, to Saudi Arabia. The girl first got on, she makes trap music, but she's in Saudi Arabia. She was the first woman to get a car, period. So that's the first thing she does. And so that notion of cultural capital is not even connecting with the lawmakers. But if it was like country music, if it was Luke Bryan or something like that, there would be no problem with funding, making sure we have buildings, making sure, take that back. Even country music has an issue because we're destroying the home of like the first country music song with vocals for a Margaritaville dumpster. So I think Atlanta's connections with culture is unfortunate, because this was the last bastion of culture. And once this goes, I'm not sure what we have anymore.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
It is. And for somebody like you and what you're doing with Power Haus, I really commend what you're doing, but you're fighting an uphill battle because the dollars don't flow to you. Let's be honest. When they do flow, they flow to people like Greg Mike. And there's no shade to Greg Mike, but he is a white artist who kind of paints the same mural over and over again. We know what we're getting with Greg Mike. And again, there's no shade to Greg Mike. If somebody knows him, you can tell him to holler at me. But those $1 or $2 that go to a Greg Mike mural could go to 10 or 12 artists in Atlanta who are doing great work. And the cost of even putting that mural up and acquiring the rights to put it that could go to 10 or 12 other arts organizations that are doing different things in Atlanta. But the dollars aren't following what you're trying to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of like amazing creative brands in this city that are recognized, like, you know, Atlanta influenced everything. They're all over. Butter ATL, like we're taking our narrative back. That's my goal. You're not gonna tell me that the artists that I work amongst have no value. You know, they're feeding off that. There's just an energy that we bring. It cannot be replicated, and this city needs that. We are that. It's empowering.
Okay, and I want to wrap up, but I have one question for, and I ask every one of my guests this, and I'm gonna tailor this one to you a little bit, which is, because if money, politics, like, there's no limitations. If you could do one thing right now to change one thing about the Atlanta arts community right now, there's no limitations, what would you do?
I wish that there was, like, if they took some of the funding, even a portion of what they're giving to big museums like the High and things like that, and a couple million, and they spread it out throughout the artists community. I'm for the collective ride. That would it would elevate. Again, we have families. I have a 19 and 14-year-old daughter, but I still have my own, 19 and 14-year-old daughters, but I still have my own dreams that I should be able to pursue. But I've also had one hell of a Black experience to get to this point. And this story goes on and on and on with every other Black person that you hear. You know, some are a little more fortunate, some aren't, but either way, like, and it's not even just the Black. There's the Latino, there's the Hispanic, the Asian, you know, it's just, it feels better when it's whole.
Just how can people get in contact with you, or how can people support Power Haus, or even just donate or
for sure.
Or like hire a Power Haus managed person?
Okay. So yeah, I mostly serve as like creative project liaison. That way I have more leeway. But also, yeah, to get in touch, you can go to www.powerhauscreative.atl.com. So powerhauscreative.com. And we have a process. It's right there on the website, and it's a 5-step process. It's very straightforward and simple.
If you'd like to reach me online, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at I am King Williams. So on Twitter and Instagram at I am King Williams. If you are looking for the Neighborhood Watch on any particular social media platform, it is all listed at Watch the Hood. So at Watch the Hood on any social media platform. You can also find it on SoundCloud and iTunes at the Neighborhood Watch Podcast, or also YouTube as well. So thank you once again. Please feel free to let me know. You can always email me or hit me up on social media and let me know what you think. Once again, I'm King Williams. Thank you for listening.